Today, instead of a video or Mr. Valakovic's things that make us cry all day long, we have someone who's live and in direct today. Mr. Collins grew up in Southwest Atlanta, where he faced many different challenges and obstacles. For a great deal of his childhood, he was raised by a single mom. After graduating high school, he attended the University of West Georgia, where he earned a bachelor's degree in marketing and management with a certificate in sales. Since graduation, he relocated to South Florida, where he married his wife, Stanya, and are happily raising two boys. Keith has been working in the nonprofit market for over 5 years, and for the last 3 years has been speaking to thousands. As a speaker, his passion is to encourage youth and adults to rise above their self-imposed limitations and discover the possibilities within their faith, family, finances, and fitness. He specializes in helping men who have been affected by broken promises and missed opportunities. He helps transformation happen in the lives of men that have found themselves facing life challenges and are looking to create change. His clients are servant leaders who are looking to help their students, leaders, and organizations push past self-imposed limitations within. Together, he desires to partner with View to transform lives and men around the country. I asked Keith to be here today because you've been asked to be doctor, lawyer, mom, dad, aunt, niece, psychiatrist, police officers, and 1,000 different things. And the last thing we ask you to do is then to teach. So hopefully we can kind of change that, and he can help inspire you to do what you wanted to do when you first started this job, is actually to be teachers and not so much police officers and packing wounds and everything else we have to do. So, Mr. Collins.
Thank you so much just for the opportunity and reaching out to me and allowing me to be able to encourage your faculty here. So thank you guys for that. So if you guys would just give it up for our leadership team, because they do a lot for us. All right, so I talk fast and loud, and I move quickly. So if you're a person that gets annoyed by people always moving, guess what? I might annoy you. So I'm gonna do a lot of this here, and I'm gonna do a lot of this over here, and then I'm gonna go to this table here, and then I'm gonna go to this table here. But I do have a question for you all. Would you allow me to be my full and authentic self?
Absolutely.
You guys don't sound like you want it. But let's try it again. Will you allow me to be my full and authentic self?
Yes. Of course we do.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That was like one of those, yes, I don't know what this means, but I'm going to hold on to my chair. Well, I just want to thank you guys, one, for coming back. I know some of us were there. We were like, oh, man, we go back when? We go back, Monday. Don't know. Can I call in Slick? I can't. All right. So, but thank you, because it was because a teacher like yourself that my life was radically changed. If I were to tell you a little bit of my story starts off when I was 3 years old. In fact, do me a favor, close your eyes for me. I promise you, no smoke, no mirrors, no nothing crazy. But close your eyes for me. Imagine you're 3 years old and you have your mom and dad, and you don't know what's going on, but you hear them in the kitchen. You hear your dad raises his voice. You hear your mom raises her voice. You hear stuff shattering inside of the kitchen, and you walk into the kitchen to see your mom and dad arguing. At 3 years old, you don't know what this all means for your life, but you see this happening. And then the next thing you know, you see your dad comes to you, and your dad comes to you, and he kneels down at your level because you're only about 2.5 feet maybe. And he grabs you by the shoulder, but you notice that there's some red stuff on his arm. Your dad has been cut, and a knife is inside of your mom's hand. Not knowing what this all means, you find yourself looking at your dad eye to eye. And your dad tells you, I love you, son. Little did I know that was the last experience or the last opportunity that my mom and dad would be inside of the same household. Open your eyes. That's what I brought with me. That was part of my baggage. And so for me as a young man, not necessarily having my father there, because that was that last encounter between him and my mom, I developed this self-imposed limitation thinking that I'm not good enough. So when you saw me as a student, you looked at me and you said, he's a kid, I don't know what his whole situation is, but he's here. He probably could do a little bit better. But in my head, I never could have mount up because the man who helped bring me into this world stepped away. Now, my dad is not the ultimate villain or anything of that nature because he did do only the best he could. He was young. My mom was young. My mom had me when she was 17 years old. So you can only imagine back in 1987, when my mom had me, what it was like to figure out being in Atlanta, Georgia, living in the projects. When I say the projects, I'm talking about the area where they shut it down because the people that come out of that community ain't so good. That's my story. That's part of my story. So as I go through life and figure out this life that I've been given and trying to figure out who I am, I find myself in elementary school, then middle school. Middle school, I get to a point to where my mom, and this is a cool thing about my mom, I love my mom. Although majority of her life, she raised me as a single parent till I was about 11 years old, where her second marriage was successful. Yes, that's right, her second marriage was successful. She tried everything she could to do to put men inside of my life that would lead and guide me to my future success. But some of those men, they had other things in mind. I remember one time I asked a guy my mom was dating, and I said, "Hey man, what's your shoe size?" And he looked at me and said, "Won't you ask your dad his shoe size?" My mom said, "Whoa, we can't have this." So needless to say, he was gone. But in my head was that old song, "Another One Bites the Dust." Because I knew that he couldn't measure up. So when my mom finally makes her first marriage, I'm excited. I'm like, yay, sweet, I got a father figure, consistent father figure. And this guy attempts to kill my mom. And not one of those, well, you didn't see it type things. I was there. I saw his hand on her neck. And keep in mind, my dad was less than 5 miles away. So my dad, he had struggles of his own. He's originally from Alabama. He moved to Georgia when he was about 18 years old. He's excited. He's living life. He's working. He finds this young lady, and they get together and they make me. And my mom was looking for commitment. My dad wasn't. So my dad was like, yo, we couldn't see eye to eye. So what happened was I witnessed my dad, and I was trying to figure out all of these things while I'm in school. So I'm looking at my dad and I'm asking, what's going on? Why is this? Why is that? Because I'm confused because you didn't commit to my mom, but yet you just got married and you have 3 kids. Now, like I told you, my dad's not the villain because he would pick me up on the weekends and do the best he can. We had one of those weekend relationships. From time to time, he would be successful at picking me up. There were times that he was not successful picking me up. And those times that he wasn't successful ring out of my head louder than anything else. Because where I'm from, we have this, there's a hill. And when you look at like the neighborhood, when people come into the neighborhood, you see this hill. So I'm sitting there and I'm peeking out the window. My dad's coming. My mom would say, hey, don't get your hopes up too high. Because if you're a mother and you have that distant relationship with the father of your children, you don't want to see your children's heart broken. So you tell them, hey, hold on, don't get your hopes up. Let's not get too, let's see. And so I would say, man, my dad's coming to get me. My dad has one of those deep voices. My voice is kind of squeaky or whatever, but my dad's voice is kind of like Darth Vader. Luke, I am your father. So when he would call me and when I would talk to him, he would say, hey, man, I'm on my way to get you. I'm like, sweet, yay, Dad, awesome. And then it would get close to that time, and I would look out the window, and my mom would tell me, hey, don't get your hopes up. And so my dad came, I'm looking and I'm thinking he's coming, and he gives me that phone call at, let's say, 3 o'clock. He tells me he's going to pick me up. And then he calls me and said, hey, man, something came up. I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. So I then went on and tried to fill this void with sports, girls, all of these things because I'm looking for the approval of my Father. So from middle school, I played sports. I played football. I did track. High school was my breakout. I was super excited about high school. I played football. I played a little baseball. I also wrestled. And so all of these moments, I'm still doing these things to gain the approval of my Father. Now, I had a stepfather, the second marriage that I told you that my mom, turned out to be successful. Now, this guy was there, but he could not replace my biological father. And I think about this and I think about how amazing he was in my life. So I get to high school and I'm starting to figure out high school and it is completely weird. Like you guys know, like kids walk in, you're like, what is going on? But they're like, you're like, whoa, relax, kid. Like I'm just excited. You don't understand. Like, check this out, the video. And you're like, whoa, put the phone out of my face. So I'm one of those kids that's excited, not necessarily knowing myself, not knowing that I'm only looking for male attention. So eventually I bring all of this baggage, everything that I'm lugging with me to college. Keep in mind that I got to college, I believe, by the skin of my teeth. I was so desperate to change the legacy of my family, I even went to it was like 2 months, I think 2 or 3 months before school ended. And I'm like trying to get to college. I'm thinking like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Like, man, I'll try to cheerlead, man. Maybe you can get a scholarship cheerleading or something. So I go to the cheerleading team. Now, if you teach cheerleading for males, like, there's nothing against that. Like, I'm down with it. But I go and I'm like, man, I'll try to cheerlead if I could, man. I'm trying to get to school because for my family and for where I was brought up, if you got an education, that meant you had an opportunity to do better or to do more. So I get to college, and next thing you know, I struggled through it. I brought all my study habits that I should have learned in high school and college and, high school and middle school where teachers were trying to pour into me and tell me, but, I wasn't listening. So I get to college and I skate by my first 2 years and I had those classes, those remedial classes when you start off. Like I had those. Like I was looking at people, your class started with a 1? Oh, mine was 0, 0, 0, 1. Like mine was like not computer code. So I step in, and then I find myself with meeting this teacher. His name was Dr. Burton. And this teacher, he really did what educate really means for me. And if you know what the word educate means, to educate, it comes from the Latin word educo, means to draw out or to pull out of. And that's what all of us inside of this room are charged to do, is to pull out of these young people the greatness that lies inside of them. Now you might say to yourself, now some of them ain't so great. I get that. But here's what I've learned about people. People rise to your level of expectation. Think about it. People rise to your level of expectation. Raise your hand if you had a student that you thought more of them, and then eventually because you thought more of them, you've seen great and tremendous results. Raise your hand. Cool. Thank you. And so this teacher meets me. His unorthodox style of teaching. When I say unorthodox, we held hands at the end of class. Insane. Like, you try that now, like, kids might be like, back up now. Like, we sang and held hands. And I'm sitting there the whole time like, man, this is crazy, man. What is this dude talking about? But what he did for me was he started to unlock things that were laying inside of me. So I'm going to go ahead and start and get into my message. That was just the intro, warm up. But what I really want to tell you this is that you are the model educator. Now you might say, well, I'm not an educator. You're the model faculty. You are the model. There is no one better or better equipped to be in this facility teaching these kids than you. No one. Now, if you doubt it, if you question it, that's fine, but I'm going to tell you, you are the picture of the ideal in the model teacher. Now, when I use this picture is going to be an analogy. You can put your face on the front of it because the word picture, I'm thinking of the actual picture and I'm thinking of the visual. Because we all have someone that has poured into our lives or that has affected us in a major way. So what we're going to do over the next couple of moments is to look at this picture here. We're going to look at this picture and we're going to learn from it. And you're like, Keith, come on now, man. I ain't 5-year-olds. I ain't going to learn from a picture. I believe that we could look at this picture and learn something from it. The first thing that I think we can learn from this picture is we can learn by its shape. We can learn by what it's made of. Look at it, it's made of glass. So my thing, what I would challenge you is to know what you're made of. Like some of us, all of us have something that's inside of us that is uniquely designed to meet or to communicate or to connect with the students that we encounter. Now, I mentioned about my father and my father's situation. There are many of us in here that have different things. Some of us have probably been a part of a divorced home. Some of us have probably been a part of something that is unique, that pain that has been part of us in our lives, that has uniquely equipped us and designed us to be able to connect and communicate to these students. Now, this picture knows what it's made of. It knows that it's made of glass. It knows that it's sand. It knows that there's heat, there's fire that was put together and molded to create this. Now, when we look at this picture, we know what shaped it. And I think about my teacher, Dr. Burton. He knew what shaped him. Just like myself, he too had a fatherless dad. In fact, he was raised by his grandfather, and he communicated and told me those things. Now our first conversation, he was like, hey man, let me tell you about my grandfather, man. My dad was this and that. No, that wasn't how the relationship started. It was a continual over time evolution. But here's what I know. Sometimes people need to know how much you care for them before they know what you know. Or I've heard it like this. Sometimes people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I saw and I felt that this teacher cared for me. And that's the same thing that I started to do in my life. And so when I look at this picture knows what makes it up. Next thing that this picture knows, it knows its shape. It knows its capacity. And this capacity comes from, and it talks to self-discovery. Like, I can't come to this pitcher of water and say, hey, can you hold 5 gallons? You probably look at me and say, Keith, now that's going to make a mess, and nobody's trying to clean that up. But this pitcher knows its capacity. For you as educators, I challenge and I encourage you to test your limits. Some of us inside of this room want to start clubs, and we're scared to start clubs because we don't know our capacity. Some of us inside of this room wants to start like groups and things like that with students. You want to step in and stop some tragedies happening from these students' lives. But yet we sometimes get afraid and we're shy. Well, this kid doesn't look like me, or this kid doesn't have the same background. This kid is like the popular kid at the school. Like there should be nothing that hinders us from doing everything we can to break through the walls for these students. Some of the students that we encounter, this will be their last opportunity to hear someone say their name and not yell at them. This might be the opportunity that they need that change the trajectory of their whole entire life. What you do is something that, man, I wish I could pay you what you're worth. I wish I can give you what you're worth. I wish I can do all of those things. But I'm telling you, you have something of value. There's something inside of you that you have to offer. So give it. Don't hold back. Pour it out. And so as I look at this picture, the next thing I would look at this picture and say is that this picture, it has a shape, right? You would say it has a handle. You would say it's shaped or steered by something, right? This handle. As educators, as leaders, I want you to know what steers you. What I mean by that, what steers you, what guides you, what principles do you have that live your life? What is it about you that you are uncompromising with? Because students need to know these things. Like, I can't look at a thing of brownies and say, man, those brownies look good. I want to make those when I get home and not know the ingredients. Think about that. There are students that look up to you, as Alan said earlier, that, man, that you were asked to be doctors, you're asked to be teachers, you're asked to be psychologists, you're asked to be mom, dad, all of these things, and these students look up to you. When I say look up to you, they glorify you, they put you at a higher level. And they look at you and they come to you and they ask you, how can I do this? How can I do X? How can I do this? How can I do this? And so they look for you for guidance. They look for you for guidance. So they want to know what makes you up. So that's why you have to know what principles you have. And as I would hang out with my teacher would tell me the principles. The cool thing about this teacher is that he was a risk taker, man. When I say a risk taker, like, check this out. Him and I, we had a unique experience. Actually, me, him, and one other student. There was a moment inside of him teaching us where he came to the class, and this is what he did. He would have a moment where each semester he would have one student that he picks out to be his liaison for the next semester. So he allowed me to be the liaison for the next semester. And I was super excited about it. I was like, yeah, sweet, awesome. Didn't think I was get picked. But he looked at me and said, man, you got something in you. And so the next semester came, and I'm doing it, and I'm excited and everything. And he looks to everyone, and he says, hey, guys, for my 70th birthday, here's what I want to do. I want to go skydiving. Yeah, he said skydiving. Now, keep in mind now, I like my feet on the ground, okay? Nobody's trying to jump. I'm not trying to do that at all. In fact, the most I'll get off the ground is this. That's it, right? So he said, hey, we're going skydiving. And most of you guys are too chicken anyway to go skydiving, so if you want to go, let me know. Now, because he started pouring into me and telling me that I got more inside of me, I started to stick my head out a little bit more. Keep in mind that I got the chance to be the liaison for his class because, wow, I stuck my head out. And so I get to this point to where he says, hey, I'm going skydiving. I raise my hand. Me and one other student, I never forget his name. Name's Nathan. And both him and I, on the day, show up, and we thinking more students are going to come. No one shows up. So it's me, him, and our crazy teacher who's 70 years old about to skydive. And we do it. We skydive. But he put me in and he brought me into his world and he showed me, hey, life is about risk. Life is about taking opportunities and chances. Man, go after it and do what you have. And I looked at this as a moment for me to step out and be closer to my destiny because he told me, he looked at me eye to eye and said, you know what? You're going to change the world. Now, when a man looks you in the eye like that and looks at you and that teacher, that how can you not believe that? Some of the students, their belief in themselves only comes from you. That's it. It's not their mom, it's not their dad, it's you. Because you're outside your mom and dad, they're supposed to love you. Nobody ever ran into an ugly baby. Right? Like, my baby's the cutest. So they look to you. And man, like you it's a faculty. Man, do this last thing, and this is the last thing I want you to do, is to do this. Pour it out. Pour it all out. In fact, let's do this. Overflow. Overflow. Give the students everything that they need. If that means you staying up later, do it. Because here's what Miles Monroe said. Dr. Miles Monroe, amazing, amazing teacher. He said, the graveyard is one of the most wealthiest places on earth. He said, think about it. There are songs that have not been sung. There are dreams that have not been filled. There are books that have not yet been written. Think about that. The graveyard is the most wealthiest place on earth. You have something that the students need. Why would you hold on to it? Pour it out. Give it all. And because that teacher gave his all and did everything he could for me, my life was drastically changed. I graduated May the 7th of 2011. May the 12th of 2011, I moved to Florida. May the 17th of 2011, I started working with the company that I previously worked for. February of 2012, I got married to my beautiful wife that I met in college. And we met crazy. We met through Facebook. We'll just leave it at that. But that's how we met. And then from that experience, from everything that teacher has taught me, I have went on to speak to thousands, have impacted thousands of students. I just recently this year started my own company. Within a couple of months, I'll be producing or publishing my first book. I say first because there's more inside of me. I have a stack of books that inside of this app that I want to write. And this teacher was one of the vital tools for that happening. So, as a faculty here at Northeast High School, my challenge for you is to pour it all out. Man, this team here wants to see you succeed. Grab hold of them. If you're unsure on something, ask. Raise your hand if you've been here for more than 2 years. All right? Raise your hand if you've been here for about 10 years. Anyone past 10 years? Boom. They're the veterans. They know how to do it. When you see them, there's some of them, students just walk up to them, hey, how you doing? And you look at them like, how in the world the kids know you like that? So do it. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to share. It's been my time. You all have been amazing. Thank you.